All right, here we go again. You need to be careful and make sure officers and agents and security people really apply themselves and pay attention to detail. The deep state spells are definitely up. They're going for the kill during Christmas. Holidays and birthdays that they ruin on their victims' lives will sometimes lead to suicide more so than on other days, and they know that, so they're doing that right now. They're attacking me in several locations. So we'll start with this one. The messaging came in from the former FBI, the former DHS, and I told you some of the people you put out probably shouldn't have been put out. And of course, Cash Patel agrees, but there's nothing he can do because he knows he didn't want to lose certain people. Right. Well, you have these people, run around snitching and stuff like that about nothing. Again, the deep state snitchers are actually like operators that set it up, or it's not even true at all. They just put like 10 people together to say a bunch of stuff. Right. There's Republican deep state. So they told me, it's psychic, but they said we have files on the outside of FBI about your case and other cases. If they let us live our life like you wanted to do when you left, and they didn't let you live your life, then they don't go anywhere. Because obviously it's a risk to, and it's, again, they're not bad people. They don't want to take FBI files and put them all across the world. And some DHS files too. But they have, what happened is, so what the deep state says is that I'm being protected. That's why I'm not being arrested. But it's a lie. They go in and they act like I'm going to be arrested in 3 weeks or a month, at the most 6 months. It just kind of goes along until they can get the members of the public and the cops to commit felony crimes. Then they twist their head that they're going to be arrested, and then of course they're in for life because they don't want to be arrested, quote unquote. They're all chicken shits. Right. And they dig the new swimming pool, the new house, the new cars, the women, the men. But everything that you've all said, the reason I was never arrested is because there's a voluminous amount of evidence the other direction. They're on wiretap. It was just never prosecuted because, the attorneys didn't want to be Jonathan Luna. So essentially they don't prosecute the case. But then they don't act on the other evidence that's, not real evidence. Right. But they said if they treat their life like they did my life, that those files would come out. And if you notice, it is moving in that direction. Right. Supposedly there's a ton of files that are exculpatory, essentially, people are on wiretaps conspiring what they're going to say. It can't be taken to a courtroom because there's nothing there to begin with. But if it did, the judge would destroy them. Right. And then it recommend, charges on them. Right. There was actually a plan by certain judges. I couldn't tell you what community and when and where, but there was a psychic thing that came in that the judges had set up a whole thing that they were going to do. They had actually created a scenario and they said, this is how we're going to handle it. So if my case ever came to them, they were going to initiate investigations. Now, I'll tell you one thing right now. Judges are extorted by the same people. So once they get a whiff that the case is that thing, and that's what Trump has to be careful of. When you're attacking the judges, I don't know if you're initiating some of these operators to try to extort the judges. Well, that's not going to get your case anywhere. Maybe 1 out of 10. But 9 out of 10 are going to try to do you back because they're part of the same thing, that you're part of. Right. You have to be careful, but it's not the same thing. We have to take care of this immigrant problem. Obviously, people have been paid off and they love the narco money and the sex trafficking money and they don't want it to disappear, but that's too bad. right? Because remember, who's being sex trafficked? What's a percentage of the people using the narcotics? Immigrants, right? 100%. So again, that was the problem, that they couldn't get any prosecution going because the attorneys wouldn't do it. Well, you want to be Jonathan Luna. I mean, it's plain as day that Jonathan Luna is related to my case, right? And then what they're doing to me is what they did to Jonathan Luna. Thank you, Larry. That was the problem. Like, I was like shocked because again, the whole psyop. I mean, I wasn't awake. I didn't know what exactly it was. I was trying to figure out what it was. But the whole psyop is that it's about you. I knew it was bullshit. Right. But when, again, it's like any case you're on. Like when all of a sudden your theory goes BAM! And you're like, oh, it's real. So when Jonathan Luna died, I'm like, okay, they were doing him too. Right. Wonder who else they were doing. Well, I walk around the courthouse and I talk to people to try to get, just the vibe. And I don't say too much. I just let them talk it out. Right. So, so I'm talking to this court reporter and she bonks out. And I'm like, oh shit, they're doing her too. And she's a pretty big court reporter. Right. I think Ned was the senior one back then. I can't remember who it was, but maybe Ned was. She was a woman, and maybe they were independent. I don't know if they were, but she was a senior court reporter. She's a really nice woman. Right. Her husband had like cerebral palsy or something, but they were doing her. What was it? The other woman? I can't remember if it was her or the chief judges. Could have been the chief judges. Right. But I don't think it was her. I don't think I remember ever being like in a room alone with her. I remember being in a room alone with that woman, but I may have the wrong reporter. But I think it was the older woman. Right. There was only one much older woman, and her husband would come in like as a messenger for her or something, and he would come in and he'd walk, kind of off kilter. Right. So yeah, she was done. I triggered something, she fried out. Yeah, she would be in Judge Mott's. But Judge Mott's had a certain woman that he used most of the time. And then he would use this woman, I think, every so often. Right. So the whole issue was that they didn't want to be the Jonathan Luna. They were willing to not prosecute, but they weren't willing to go after the deep state. And the deep state also is these private investigators. They're also in missing and exploited. Just tell because they'll shock your mind and go, "What's he talking about? Missing and exploited, the holy God, the holy God, missing and exploited." And they'll yell in your head, right? Whether you hear them or not. Just tell yourself they're everywhere. So if I tell you they're a missing exploited, they are. If I tell you they're in the Vatican, then they are. Look, well, what's his name called it what? Satan. Gabriel Omar, the exorcist, said Satan was in the Vatican. Of course Satan's in the Vatican. He's the deep state. No, it's not only America. There's spies in Russia that pay money over here to people that eventually move money to those senators that attacked our military. That's how it works. They sold out. Not political. It's a scam. Political is a scam used by the deep state. When all this fails, just call it political. It's not criminal, it's political. Well, if you call criminal political, then political is criminal. That's just the way it works in reality. So here's something you should understand. I'm going to make it easy for you. They do engage in investigative process, but if you alter the investigative process, then it becomes something else, including murder. I'll give you a quick example. Law enforcement officer. investigates, right? But they also have a gun, right? Gun, investigative process, all legal. The officer takes the gun and stops a holdup at a bank. Great job, officer. Give him an award. Give her an award. Yay! We won! And that's coming up a lot. So we have to heal bank robberies away. Then I'll get into the reasoning why that may be happening. Again, you know some of the reasoning, but I think something else happened in the economy a little different. Law enforcement officer gets off of work, needs some heroin, doesn't have any money. Or an alcoholic, whatever it is. Got into debt, gambling debt. Happens. Humans have these problems. Right. Grabs his gun, goes down to the bank, robs the bank. FBI arrested. One use of the gun is lawful, one use of the gun is unlawful. If he shoots somebody, then he kills them, and he kills them or maims them or whatever it is. It's even worse. Right. Or is she. Equal opportunity here, so it could be a she. It could be a he, she. As we used to call them, right? It's not derogatory. They don't care. This is the point. Some freaking liberal, spoon-fed, trust fund, prep school investigator sitting in DOJ right now who might get fired tomorrow is going to call that wrong. When the person that's actually a trans woman says, I don't give a shit, call me she if you want. Just let me be. We're trying to revive that thing. Like, we really don't care. It's that. They care because why? Because they're criminals. And they're using all of us to stay out of prison. Well, you got to understand something. The liberals used the trans people like a poker chip. And they don't like, a lot of them don't like being poker chips. They just want to go back to that life. Like, I don't know who they are. I knew one. I take it back. I was supposed to say I can think I said not many. I think I just said it right. There was a trans woman in Oklahoma City, in like the most conservative places in the world. Generally, I know Oklahoma City is not as conservative as the rest of Oklahoma, but Oklahoma is considered uber conservative. Naples was considered uber conservative. Those are the only places I saw trans people. I didn't see people that were trans people outside of Oklahoma and Naples. Now maybe they're quote unquote passable, but the only place I saw trans people was Oklahoma and Naples. I don't consider masculine lesbians trans, so a lot of people consider them trans. Right? There's a difference there. They prefer dominant trans or dominant lesbian. The biggest alpha males are gay. That's the funny part. The God set them up. I studied the whole thing. They want to put it before me, I'll look at it. I'll study it. I'll turn in what's illegal and I'll study the rest, and I study that also. So again, there's a vibe coming out of the people that they said, do what you need to do, investigate what you need to investigate. But if you do as like Larry, the files are coming out. Well, it's a big step. They're not going to, well, there's a group of them that have already made that decision is what I understand. No, what do you think? Think they leave everything in there to be destroyed? And who knows what's going to be destroyed? I don't know what Cash is doing. I don't know Cash from anybody. I just read in the news that he uses jets like they're like he goes to the bathroom. How many of you use the bathroom? Let me use a jet and fly to a different city to use the bathroom. And then the other thing is they're using investigative process corruptly. And the thing is, again, the mind meld, the same similar mind meld said, the thing is what they're doing is it's the same thing as a criminal organization trying to extort somebody to do something for them, or even just to bring them in. A lot of people that are in criminal organizations, they get them to commit crimes first, and then they bring them in. So again, they actually dupe one another. So again, you see this in the government all the time, but you don't see it like at that level, right? The only time I knew it existed at that level was once they tried to kill me, right? And again, it was the whole time, but again, it wasn't the trigger time. So like when I went in the Marshal Service, like Karen Shelton, she knew that's what was going to happen. She knew they were going to kill me, and that was their goal because they get paid for it. The guy that, like, to them, it's a sign. The guy, Doug Bettman, they killed him using spycraft. Right. So they figured, okay, this guy took his place. He's the next one we make money off of. I never knew what was going on. Like, people used to, like, I was on the receiving end of hate in the Marshal Service on detail until they figured out who I was because I was from Baltimore. Apparently, when somebody goes on detail in Baltimore, they hate on them because they just screw people over. Right. Now, Working went on detail, and the reverse happened. He had the Larry treatment. Right. And he never went again. I think they banned him or something, but it was bullshit. Right. They set him up. Agreed. They get paid, man. And, I don't know what was going on. The mechanics, every time Working went up there, the judge and the judge's wife might have been like, oh, he's such a great guy. That's all it takes, man, and they'll kill you. Right. The funny part is the guy running the detail with like anti-headquarters. He was anti-deep state, I guess. Back then I didn't know what the hell he was talking about pretty much. Just that people from headquarters would come in and do stuff. And he didn't appreciate it. Right. Yeah, I heard that from a lot of people. He was anti-deep state, but his people on the detail were deep state. And believe me, they were in my life. They have no right to privacy. As civilians, they were in my life. Believe you me. In fact, some of them paid money. Rick Henry paid money to have me done. Government money. An absolute fraud. Every last one of them. Made it a judicial security issue. And he spent government money to have me done. He'll go to hell, believe me. There's no out for him. Probably was no out for him before I left the Marshal Service. He was privately in my life, and he should have been fired. He should have been arrested. This is the point. When I left the government, there were deals made. They let me go, and they won't go to jail, a bunch of them. I don't know who made the deals, but somebody in the upper echelon of that scam, the upper echelon of people that killed Jonathan Luna, said okay, but it was a lie. They never tell the truth. They didn't even stop one day. Relentless investigators, bullshit. Relentless mafioso criminal spies that committed treason against the United States. That committed espionage against the United States. They affected the product of federal investigators. that were involved in national defense, national security. And that's who those senators are. They're committing the same bullshit. They know what they're doing. Somebody's leading them along by the nose. Could be Putin for all we know. Oh, but we're anti-Putin in the news. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. We're going to make Nixon great again. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.